Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into a topic that affects all of us, government borrowing in the UK. So grab your coffee, sit back, and let's break it down. All right, let's start with the basics. The UK government generally spends more than it raises in taxes. Sounds familiar, right? To fill that gap, they borrow money, lots of it. But remember, borrowing isn't free. It comes with interest payments that have to be paid back eventually. That's where it gets interesting. Most of the government's income comes from taxes. Workers pay income tax and national insurance. We all pay VAT on certain goods, and companies are taxed on their profits. Now, theoretically, the government could cover its spending entirely through taxes. Sometimes this happens. But when it can't? Well, then the choices boil down to raising taxes, cutting spending, or borrowing money. Here's where we need to pay attention. Higher taxes mean less disposable income for you and me. This translates to reduced consumer spending, which in turn can hit businesses hard, affecting jobs and wages. Lower profits mean companies pay less tax, so it's this vicious cycle we need to be aware of. Now let's talk about why governments choose to borrow instead of cutting spending or raising taxes. They often do this to boost the economy or fund large projects like new railways and roads. How do they borrow? By selling bonds, financial products known as gilts in the UK. When you buy a gilt, you're essentially lending money to the government with a promise that they'll pay you back later with interest. These gilts are seen as safe investments by financial institutions like pension funds and banks. The government sells both short and long-term gilts so they can manage their borrowing over different timeframes at varying interest rates. Now let's get into some numbers. In the last full financial year up to March 2025, the government borrowed a whopping £148.8 billion. And just recently, in June alone, borrowing was £20.7 billion, up by £6.6 billion from last year. That brings us to the national debt, which currently stands at an eye-watering £2.7 trillion. Yes, you heard that right, trillion with a T. That's roughly equal to the entire value of goods and services produced in the UK in a year. And while this figure may seem daunting, especially compared to levels before the 2008 financial crisis, the reality is that relative to our economy's size today, UK debt figures are still lower than many other leading economies worldwide. But here's where things get tricky. As national debt rises, so do interest payments. And guess what? When interest rates began climbing in 2021, after years of being low, that cost became much more apparent. Just this June 2025, interest payments soared to £16.4 billion, almost double what they were last year. So why should we care? Because every pound spent on interest is a pound not spent on vital public services like healthcare and education. Some economists argue that we're borrowing too much at too high a cost, while others believe this extra borrowing is crucial for stimulating economic growth in the long run. And here's an interesting twist. The Labour Party has decided to stick to a fiscal rule from the previous government that mandates reducing debt as a proportion of our economy over 5 years. Chancellor Rachel Reeves even adjusted how they measure debt for investment purposes. This means they're looking at broader metrics like public sector net financial liabilities, essentially including student loan repayments too. Downing Street assures us that they're committed to economic stability and sticking to these fiscal rules is non-negotiable. But can we really take that at face value? As we look toward the future, we see data suggesting that companies are holding off on hiring or replacing staff, indicating a potential slowdown in job creation amidst all this borrowing chaos. The Bank of England has already cut its key rate multiple times since August last year, now at its lowest since March 2023, even though inflation remains stubbornly above target levels. So what does all this mean for you and me? It means that understanding how much money the UK government borrows and how it impacts our daily lives is crucial if we want to navigate these economic waters successfully. Thanks for tuning in today. If you found this breakdown helpful or enlightening in any way, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more economic insights. Until next time, keep questioning and keep learning.